Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. We've got our first version Luna 1 Stygian Onslaught. Woohoo! Hey, you! Now some of you guys might have noticed that this content looks a little bit familiar, but fortunately I did add some bonus content to this, including a new run where we actually placed rank 9 in the world, as well as the character builds and stuff in order to pull that off. So if you're curious to see what kind of account it takes to do stuff like that, well, here you go for some extra content. Alrighty, let's take a look at the brand new Stygian Onslaught in Luna 1. We can see here that we have 3 bosses. We've got the Aeon Blight Drake, we've got the Battle Scarred Rock Crab 1 million blasts, and the Battle Hardened Fireblade Shock Trooper Forlorn Hope. And these guys, let me tell you, are power creeping how long their names are. They're going to need 2 lines at this rate to fit what crazy names that they're going to come up for these guys. But yeah, we'll go ahead and take a quick look at the actual runs. Let me just say, I feel like these are more difficult in some ways, probably just more difficult in general. And yeah, we'll take a quick look. And we'll take a look at my day 1 speedruns as well. Alright, so I do have a few quick runs that I did on the Creator Experience server. This was my first clear of these 3 bosses. You should definitely have better artifacts than what we had on the Creator Experience server, which was typically between 130-ish or 170% crit value for a lot of characters. A lot of these 5-star characters, I did use their signature weapons because otherwise their damage potentials would just be way too low to even clear this content at all due to the poor artifact quality, as well as the fact that the characters on the Creator Experience servers, their talents are not crowned either. So we're missing a ton of damage because of that. And here's a code for 60 Primogems if you haven't redeemed a creator code yet, down in the description below, because you guys are the best for liking and subscribing. Just check the description for a link to it and or the code itself. Okay, let's take a look at the runs and mechanics for each of these bosses, starting with the Aeon Blight Drake. As you can see, we dealt a bunch of damage to it, and past the 75% mark, you can see that it increases pyro resistance. Then the little bit of cryo damage actually pushed it down to 50% HP, and we can see at 75, 50%, and 25% HP, it changes resistances. And here we can see that if you let it fly up in the air, then it won't have any weak points, and your run is basically cooked. So, in other words, this boss, because it switches its resistances between whichever element ended up doing, I believe, the most damage to it during each of its phases, this means that you will basically want 2 elements or more worth of damage against this thing in order to, well, deal with it. So here, this is, Constellation 0, Refinement 1, Mavuika plus Mualani with, I gotta be completely honest, pretty bad artifacts. Remember, the Creator Experience server has bad artifacts as well as it doesn't have those buffs, so yeah. But we can see here that I'm basically just alternating between Mualani and Mavuika's main rotations. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just that, as you want to bring it down to the 25%, breakpoints with each individual element, as we can see. And when you actually kind of do its little stun thing and it enters a little stun animation, it actually will take a couple of seconds before the increased resistance actually kicks in. And this is good because that means that, it's not really at exactly 75% HP, because not only can you do more damage than most 75% HP like you saw at the beginning, but also it takes a little bit of time for it to actually kick in. So you do have that to use for your, as an advantage. You can see some teams that I've collected or that I've seen online posted by other players that have cleared this with reasonable levels of investment. And yeah, they pretty much, most of them have 2 forms of damage that deal decent amounts of damage. Like for example, we have Skirk Cryo plus Hydro with Yelan Furina, etc., etc. And this next boss, the crab boss, flies up in the air and it spits out all these mushrooms. And you really do not want to hit these mushrooms with pyro, because look at that, it just one-shot poor Bennett there. And yeah, so definitely avoid pyro against this thing, because it is just death. And if you don't break the mushrooms fast enough, it will just one-shot you. But there are a couple tricks for breaking these things really fast. We can see here I'm using Yelan, And we're actually going to use the bloom limit to our advantage. We can see here that because there is a bloom limit of like 5 blooms on the screen, that means that you can just bust it like that. And finally, you can also use Lauma's hold elemental skill to deal lunar bloom damage to instantly bust all of them in order. Well, you need to bust 6 of them to break its shield in order to bust that. So yeah, this one is a bit more free-ish to play-ish friendly team. You don't technically need Nilo's, signature weapon here, but it did help, especially given the very piss-poor artifacts that we have. Although artifact quality doesn't matter as much for Nilo Bloom team. So yeah, it is definitely a bit of a tight clear without Lauma. Needless to say, Lauma completely trivializes this boss. It just becomes a complete joke. However, without Lauma, even like more traditional Bloom teams, you do have to, kind of try a bit. And we can see here that the goal is to also hit the mushrooms with bloom damage, because when you hit the mushrooms with bloom damage, they will fly up and attack, dealing a multiplier of however much damage that mushroom took from bloom. Therefore, basically, literally just multiplying your bloom damage against it as long as, those mushrooms are around. So you definitely want to, hit the mushrooms with bloom damage if you're close enough to them. And we can see that for this, you have to have a mechanic that deals with these mushrooms at the beginning, because otherwise your team literally will just die. So pretty much any form of bloom will help, although not Burgeon necessarily, because yeah, Burgeon will blow you up as well. So be careful with Burgeon. However, the rest of it though, you can just see variations of bloom teams. Lauma Bloom and Lauma Nilo Bloom, Lauma Hyper Bloom, all these Lauma variations are probably the best team option you have. And there's some pretty solid free-to-play friendly ones that will likely take more sweating, like Nahida with a Hyper Bloom, as well as, just a Nilo Bloom that's more free-to-play friendly focused, and Alhaitham as well. Threat DPS, I'm sure Aggravate and other characters that work well with Bloom work too. Anyway, up next we have this Fatui guy who puts up this shield pretty early on in the fight. And we can see that, Arlecchino and even my Constellation 6 Nuvalet, okay, I don't know if my Nuvalet has no artifacts or something, but yeah, he was doing no damage to it as well. And after, if you don't break its shield, it will summon this lightning storm, which, yeah, it's just going to ruin your run. So you have to break those shields. And the way that you break those shields is you can deal just enough raw electro damage to them. Essentially, you can see the shield's resistances. It resists most of the elements pretty highly, except for electro. And each shield has about 4.5% HP, and this thing just has a ton of HP for some reason. But basically, electro charged and lunar charged damage will stop the shield from healing, and that's one of the big issues with this shield, is that it keeps healing. And not only that, the shield also takes a massive amount of additional damage from electrocharged and from lunar charged damage. So obviously shilling electrocharged, shilling lunar charged, more importantly for their wallets. And yeah, basically once you break the 3 shields, it will also restore a bunch of energy for your characters as well. So we can see here that, Varesa plus Ineffa basically trivializes this fight, although yeah, the artifacts again are pretty bad. But yeah, so you can now see that once you just break his shield, it is just a very thick boy with 9 million hit points. But you can also see here that even after it's recovered, which is, right now it's recovered, it still has a negative 50% electro resistance, meaning that this is very favorable to electro DPS characters. So you can just brute force the shield with, for example, Varesa overloaded teams. You can of course use Varesa Taser. Varesa's raw electro damage just deals a ton to it. And Skirk, as long as your Skirk, if your Skirk is like well invested, basically pretty much C0, R1 across the board, then Skirk can just out DPS the shield's healing, and you can also just freeze it and deal a bunch of damage accordingly to this guy. And you can see here that it does go through a second shield phase, kind of near the end of the fight as well. And there are some other options like Arlecchino Overvape that does reasonably well, as long as you can fulfill Taser and a character can take advantage of it. Like for example, Arlecchino Overvape, you can do other Overvape setups as well. One more quick note about its shield is that when you hit it, you cannot actually generate Favonius particles or activate these sacrificial weapons. So yeah, there's that slight handicap against the thing to keep in mind. Okay, so we have a quick day 1 speedrun as well, and needless to say, a dual DPS, actually even a single DPS works against this thing, because you can just keep it perpetually stunned by hitting its HP breakpoints, so it never ends up resisting anything. We can see in just one Mavuika burst and 3 chomps, it was out. Up next, we have this Lauma run against the annoying crab. And this rotation was thanks to, I think, DHCWSP, one of his friends, who taught him this and then ended up teaching me this. Yeah, basically, yeah, we can see here that we're relying on Lauma's Lunar Bloom damage here against this thing. Definitely slower than, for example, Mualani variants and strategies, but I decided, hey, let's throw Mualani against the first Aeon Blight Drake instead, and we can just, you know, deal a bunch of Lunar Bloom damage. 1 million damage I think I saw there, which is pretty impressive for a Lauma there. Then up next we have a Skirk team where I managed to figure out a bit of a more optimal rotation here for this. One thing I realized is that hitting it at the beginning of the fight doesn't actually deal damage to it, or not much at least. So we can see here that with this specific setup, now we are able to take out its shield thing much more efficiently, at which point a Skirk burst under the right, you know, basically with everything critting or something will actually take it out. And this puts my overall clear time at 63 seconds with 11 seconds, 30 seconds, and 22 seconds respectively. And it actually puts me in 11th place, which is pretty cool in the world. So yeah, I wasn't expecting that, but hey. Okay, so since I had to this video in that time between, you know, making the original as well as this one, I redid the runs with some improvements, and we can see here that while this rotation may look the exact same, because it really is, somehow we managed to save 1 extra second, giving us a 10-second robot chicken run. Then we have this Lauma run, which we managed to optimize a bit in order to finish off the crab a bit faster because of the timings involved, as well as the change in rotation to generate the particles for Nahida's elemental burst. And yeah, you'll notice there that the hold E actually perfectly coincided with those 3 mushroom rockets. And also one thing about Aino's burst there is actually to apply hydro to one of those little mushrooms in the sides, so that way we can give Lauma that extra, you know, Verdant Dew for her burst nuke, saving 2 seconds from the previous run and the previous upload. And then we have this slightly more optimized Skirk rotation, where I actually changed the order with Escoffier going after Shenhe. This way, Escoffier's skill will be back off cooldown sooner, and we can also cut Skirk's elemental skill short even sooner with that new normal attack combo with 2 charge attacks, I believe, into the one-shot with Skirk's burst, leading us to a new clear time record for me at 59 seconds, putting me in 9th place in the world. How exciting. I figured I'd give you guys a quick little preview as well of my characters' builds that I used to pull off the rank 9 speedrun in the world for Stygian Onslaught. And we can see, yes, it is directly correlated how much money I've spent in this game. But let's not talk about that. Let's take a look at their builds. We've got Mualani here with a pretty decent stats, a tiny bit of crit fishing. I decided not to go for 100% crit rate because that gives me just enough damage, I believe. Actually, I should go and math to see if, you know, I can get away with 100% crit rate Mualani. But yeah, whatever. The run's already done. No need to redo it again. Constellation 6, level 100. No surprise. Level 100. All the characters involved in these runs, I believe so. All of them except for Aino. And here we go, Citlali, of course, just max EM build. And was she really using the Scroll of the Hero of the Cinder City? In retrospect, I'm not even sure that really helps. But here we go, Constellation 6, and no surprise. And then we have Shilinen, who should be using the Instructor set. And indeed, she is. And there we go. And maybe in retrospect, with enough crit fishing, we can actually do a 9-second clear now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I decided not to go for too much crit fishing here, as we can see with Mavuika. And there we go. So those are her talents. And we have level 100 Lauma as well, who, yep, she was just using her signature. You can actually get more damage out of her through other methods, for example with the Widsith and her signature on Nahida instead. But yeah, alas. And then we have Nilo, who actually has way too much HP. Well, whatever. I mean, yeah, I think she actually has too much HP. She does give a bit more EM buffs though with the HP, so I guess it's fine. And then we have Nahida, who is on her signature weapon with 4-piece Deepwood Memories. Very cookie cutter Nahida build, although a bit less EM for a lot more energy recharge, because we really needed the extra energy recharge in order to get her burst up in time. Up next we have Aino, the token and only Hydro Claymore character, where we can finally use this skin. Woohoo! We finally have a character that can equip that skin. And there we go, just an energy recharge focused set for her on the Silkwood Serenade. Of course, at Constitution 0, and those are talents. She's still at level 90 though, and I believe she's the only character at level 90. And we have Skirk, who a tiny bit of crit fishing because you really had to, I don't know what makes all the variation in Skirk's damage. I think it's the crits, but to be honest, it's hard to keep track of. So yeah, there we go. Then we have Escoffier, who I actually did swap over to an attack percent timepiece instead of an ER timepiece because I realized she did have enough energy that might have helped cut that 1 extra second off that run. Then we have Furina, who has mainly energy recharge focus, as well as tenacity, as well as the Freedom Sword. And you'll notice that I actually did a much different rotation with my Skirk because I do not have the same insane amounts of energy recharge as many of the other Skirk crazy rotations that you've seen from, like, you know, people like DHC, WSP, and so on and so forth. But I ended up with 21 seconds. I do wonder if 20 seconds is possible. And yeah, those are the characters builds that I use for that speed run. Of course, this is not for the faint of heart or for those who, you know, have not spent a lot of money like I have in Genshin Impact. We just got a few more quick closing statements for you guys. As always, you know, when it comes to Stygian Onslaught, don't feel too pressured to complete them. It's often just a gear check as well as, you know, what characters you have that will kind of determine how easy of a time you have for dealing with Stygian Onslaught. And yeah, also you can always clear difficulty 4 in co-op as well. So if you're kind of stuck, well, maybe you can find a couple people to help you out, at least to get most of the Primogems, as well as one of the feathers. And when it comes to difficulty 5, of course, you will pretty much just get 1 feather, so don't sweat too much about it, all things considered. And yeah, let me know down in the comments below what team you ended up clearing this with, or, you know, struggling with as well. And it'll be super great to see because you know, a lot of people can take a look and see what other characters and teams. Of course, the teams that I suggested in this video are far from comprehensive. There are a ton of additional teams and stuff to use for this, because ultimately damage is damage and mechanics are mechanics. You cover both bases and you will be able to clear this content. Now, let me know what you guys think about this Stygian Onslaught. Did you find it easier, more difficult, or yeah, whatever you think about it, just let us know down in the comments below. And I guess I don't really have too much else to say, so as always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.